Better Buildings for Humans is powered by Advanced Glazings, makers of the Solera line of products. Solera is the leading glass glazing made specifically for architectural daylighting and with extreme insulation performance. Learn more at advancedglazings.com.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Better Buildings for Humans. I'm your host, Joe Menchefski, and this is the podcast where we explore the impact that the built environment has on our health, our wellness, our productivity, and of course, we always talk about sustainable design as well. Today, I want to introduce you to Georg Molzer. Georg is joining us from Austria today, right? You're at home today, all right?
Yes.
And we are going to talk about his creation, Shadowmap, today. Welcome to the show, Georg. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Joe, for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. So the way I do this, Georg, is I start by creating the opportunity for our guests to talk a little bit about themselves so that our listeners can learn a little bit about you. So let's start by having you tell us about your background and the path that's leading up to the founding of Shadowmap.
Okay, awesome. I think everything makes a lot of sense in retrospect. So I was always very much into engineering. As a kid, I loved to watch Star Trek and everything. So I always believed technology will improve the quality of humanity's life. Like I was a very big proponent of technology engineering. And as a kid, I was really looking forward to a very beautiful future. And this didn't fully unfold in that way yet, but I'm still a strong believer in a very bright future. But I also see that we are currently going through some difficult times. And yeah, that's the challenge we are up to, we signed up for, and happy to take it. Yeah, I studied computer science, and like a specialty of that was visual computing. So it's a lot about real-time graphics, real-time 3D visualization. And I also love the sun. And I always was an entrepreneur, you could say. So when I was 20, I founded my first little company in software design and UX design and all that stuff. And then I ended up in my first proper startup as a CTO. It was a health tech startup, and I eventually left that startup. I had quite a heavy burnout, and then I decided to build this application that I had a long time in my mind, like for many years. Like when you have this list of ideas and you collect them, and this one idea didn't really, it always was present. And I was in a crisis, and I was really thinking, what should I do with my life? And then I decided to start building this, and that's Shadowmap. It's like, it was born from an idea. I was standing on a balcony in a typical Viennese winter, which are pretty dark, so you don't see much sunlight. The sun is pretty flat on the horizon. The buildings are rather tall, and the streets are narrow. So I had a time of 2 weeks where I couldn't see the sun in the sky. And I was standing on this balcony looking over some buildings, and I thought, hey, it would be cool to have an application to see at least at noon the sunny spots. And that was the original idea. And then years later, I finally started building it. And yeah, here we are. So it's now online and working and reaching many people around the world.
Well, let's talk about what it does. Let's go right at it. Why don't you tell us what it is and why the world needed it? Why did you feel that the world needed this creation?
Yeah, I like to start this from a very fundamental perspective. Like, what is this whole thing here? What are we humans doing on Earth? Like, what's going on? And I personally put humanity first. I think it's crucial, and it's really my main aim to enable humans to have a healthy, happy, free thinking mind in the most positive way you can imagine. And of course, that might be individual, but I think this should be enabled, and I also think that's possible. And the sun is like the ultimate energy source. It's the largest energy source in the solar system. I recently did a presentation, and I started with, like, if your aim is to expand human consciousness in the universe, you need a spaceship. The best spaceship you can imagine is a planet. And that planet needs energy, so it rotates around an energy source, which is a star. And in our case, it's the sun. And for millions of years, that stuff worked pretty well. And it feels like in the last decades, humanity has lost the understanding for sunlight and how to use it efficiently, how to plan with it, how to live with it in a healthy way. And we want to bring that back. We want to enable every stakeholder, every human being to super simply understand sunlight availability.
That is a pretty lofty goal, and I love hearing it. So let's talk about what it does specifically and who's going to use it and take advantage of what it actually does, its functionality.
Sure. So, like when we talk about sunlight, of course, it has a time component. The sun rises in the morning, it sets in the evening. And then during the day, it moves around, and you either have sunlight or you don't. And you don't have sunlight if there is a shadow occluder, like a shadow occluder, some structure that is in the way. And this can be buildings, it can be terrain, it can be trees or vegetation. Of course, it can also be the atmosphere itself, like everything that's somehow in the way. And we solve this by taking into consideration as most of these occluders as possible and combining it with the time aspect. So in essence, you can really simply imagine it like Google Earth or Google Maps in 4D. So you have three-dimensional structures plus a time component. And so for every day in the year, for every time, you have a pretty precise visualization of the shadows that occur. And what you can also do is you can not only do this for points in time, you can also cover time ranges, and then you can do analytics. So you have like a three-dimensional solar cadastre. I hope that's an English word, actually. Please tell me if it's not.
Say the word again.
Like solar cadastre, we call it in German. It's like a insolation visualization. You like for time ranges, you have basically a three-dimensional heat map that shows you like not only roof surfaces, but also like facades, which is especially useful in the northern hemisphere, like the further you're away from the equator.
Right.
The flatter the sun is. So for solar energy, it's really cool to have vertical surfaces covered as well. And this is what we can do.
Yeah.
And this whole thing is fully editable. So you can upload 3D models, you can edit existing 3D data, you can customize that, and you can make very quickly, very precise simulations about everything sunlight.
Okay. Okay.
And you also asked me who uses it. You can imagine, so it's really useful for real estate purposes. You want to understand how bright your future home will be. You know, like maybe you look at it in summer and you have no idea how it's going to be in winter, or vice versa. So with Shadowmap, you can simulate every season, every time of the day. Architects use it to plan and also visualize their projects. City planners, solar energy companies, and also like photography people, like photographers, film studios, but also, which is now coming more and more, is like the whole health aspect. So people who just want to find a good spot for morning sunlight, because I'm sure you've heard about how beneficial it is to receive morning sunlight to kickstart your...
I live it and breathe it, but why don't you tell us? Because just in case there's anybody out there who hasn't heard.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah.
Man, it's becoming mainstream and I'm happy about it. You know, like people like Andrew Huberman, he's, I think, the top podcast in the world, like health podcast, talking all the time about it. It's crucial to get especially infrared wavelengths onto your skin in the morning. And it's like, I don't want to talk stupid stuff, so please get your information at the sources. But for me, it makes a lot of sense. Like it's this long frequency infrared waves and photons that penetrate your skin and go deep into your skin and directly go into the cells, and they stimulate your mitochondria. And there seem to be studies about Alzheimer and dementia and stress levels, immune system. Yeah, exactly. And all that stuff is positively affected by sun exposure, and especially like the long wavelengths. And this is, at least where I live in Vienna, it's quite tricky to see morning sun or evening sun because there's so many buildings. On the countryside, it's easier, or if you live next to the ocean. And also like sunlight at noon, which is higher in UV. You need UV to produce vitamin D in your body. And I personally, the health aspect is a big one because I had skin cancer myself like 13 years ago. And I was using sunscreen back then. And I know some of these things I'm saying, they might trigger people because I also went through the process. I was using sunscreen all the time. I'm not using it anymore since 7 years or so. Yeah. I don't think I will get skin cancer. Also, like I don't look old or something. We are discovering that there's a lot of misinformation, to use that beautiful word, about the sun out there. And
it's almost as if the people who were selling suntan lotion or sunscreen maybe exaggerated it a little bit.
No way.
No.
No way. Yeah, I mean, I think, like everybody needs to discover these things for themselves. I really believe in this. I think it's all about, if you are radiating a happy life and positive thoughts, then people might ask you, okay, what are you doing? And this is the only way to bring positive change. It's like, I'm not going to teach anybody about anything. It's just something that I have learned and some things that seem obvious to me. And I went through some things as well myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. As soon as we're done, I'm going on somebody else's podcast, the Spaces podcast with Demetrius Lynch. I don't know if you've seen that one out of Los Angeles, but we're going to talk about the exact things that you and I were just talking about right there. We're going to talk about,
Awesome.
how little people are recognizing the extreme impacts of isolating ourselves from the sun as we spend too much
Yeah,
time indoors, excessive time indoors. And, that leaves you with two choices. You either get out of the buildings that you occupy, get out of them more often, or bring sun into those buildings, or both, some combination thereof, or the consequences are substantial. I had Dr. Glenn Jeffries from
oh, we also had him on our podcast.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, the things he's discovering are just, world changing. And people thought he might be a little far out there, but now we're seeing multiple researchers
Yeah,
finding the same things, like confirming that Dr. Jeffries was spot on, and even getting more details of the impacts of the absence of the long wavelength reds in the near IR as well. That portion of the spectrum is critical
exactly,
too.
exactly. And this is also why we want to bring this into our application. So I've mentioned already our target audience, but basically there's a market of more than 8 billion people who would benefit from, like some people live in areas where it's so easy to find sunlight, but some don't. And
Yeah.
like bringing awareness of the health effects of sunlight during different times of the day, this is like such an obvious thing to do. And I think it's really, like, I'm really very happy that more and more people are waking up to this and talking about it publicly, because it's just going to improve lives. Like the healthier the people are, the clearer they can think, the more positive and active they are. And it's just going to be a beautiful future.
Do you want to bring lots of healthy, beautiful, natural light in your building and still meet energy codes? Try Solera from Advanced Glazings. Learn more at advancedglazings.com. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about buildings. The show is called Better Buildings for Humans, and very much aligned with your objectives as well, which is why I'm so excited to have you here. But let's talk about the gaps in existing technology that Shadowmap is going to fill, right? So we've got Radiance. Everybody's familiar with Radiance. And then there's a few other modeling tools or tools that use Radiance as the engine, and they just change the UX. So, what does Shadowmap do that we can't do with Radiance? Is it just a matter that I shouldn't say just, is it a matter that you've made it more user-friendly, made it more possible for a broader audience to use it? You don't have to be as brilliant as, say, David Geisler-Moroder, a fellow Austrian who is probably the world's leading expert on Radiance. Is it about the UX, or are you bringing more and different functionality?
I think you nailed it. It's really, I think the UX is the secret recipe here, because you reach so many people with this. You can imagine, like, you just go on shadowmap.org, you click on the app button, and you have a web application right in your browser that's instantly available, that has already 3D data all around the world. And with a super simple interface, you can just change the time or the date, and that's it. And I think because it's so easy to use, we reach so many people. We are growing fully organically, which is also really cool, because, like when I started with this idea, I had many people trying to change my mind how I would do it. But I always thought, like, this needs to be done really well. Otherwise, people won't use it. And if nobody uses it, doesn't matter, it really doesn't matter. And I was quite stubborn with the approach how I did it. And I think it worked out, because we reach now around 300,000 people around the planet every month.
Wow.
And that's organically, and it's growing. And of course, I think we do have some really cool features on top. So for example, our model for the whole insolation, like the irradiance analysis, it's quite precise. So we take into account atmospheric conditions. So let's say you have winter and you have a lot of clouds in the given months in different regions in the world. Then we also take indirect sunlight into consideration. We take into account shadow occluders in the surroundings of 50 kilometers. So let's say you have a house, you want to install solar panels, and you have like this perfect southern roof. But let's say in reality, the sun is behind the mountain much earlier than meteorological sunset would say. Then we also take this into consideration. So we try to be as realistic as possible. Of course, like, it's a long journey, and we go there step by step, and we become better and better. But I think we are already much better than other tools out there, which are also much more complicated to use. And we get this also as feedback, and take it from there, get better and better.
So what about, like, you've got that many users, which is incredible. Can you give me any examples of an architect or an urban planner using it, and specifically what they used it for, and maybe talk a little bit about the outcomes?
Yeah, it's cool. We just had a really cool guest on our podcast as well, Victoria Neumüller. She's a civil engineer, and she uses Shadowmap to optimize energy consumption for buildings. And she's giving this example where she used it on a house, and that house literally was just oriented the wrong way. And just by rotating it a bit, the whole house became 75% more energy efficient. And initial installation costs of 30,000 euros could be thrown out of the budget because it was not necessary anymore. And this is just awesome because it's so simple and it's a win situation. I mean, maybe not for the sellers of the hardware, but everybody else benefits. The environment benefits and the household benefits. It's just perfect. Like nobody wants to live in a house where you have to heat super hard in the winter and where you have to cool in the summer. Like it's better if you can just live in the natural air, and it's cost efficient. So this is really cool. And it's a great example that just a simple software, because every stakeholder can be involved, like the architects, the planners, everybody understands immediately what's going on, and you don't need to make like complicated charts and diagrams because it's so visual. You just see it right away. I think that's a huge benefit actually.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, something I wanted to share as well. So when I had this idea like some years ago, my original idea was about finding sun. And then we had this application online. It was received well. And then we started just to ask our users what they use it for, because it could be anything, right?
Yeah.
And there we saw pretty quickly that Shadowmap is mostly being used to research real estate before you buy or rent. So that's still the majority of our users. And now
that's brilliant.
The solar energy, which is on the second spot, but this also happened only after we launched this 3D analytics feature a year ago. So it's also now more and more relevant in solar energy things. We're starting a cooperation with Empire in 2 weeks. Like it's a very large solar installation company in Germany.
Yeah.
And then you have like architecture, planning, health, photography, etc. But this whole property search thing is still the biggest case. And this is also why we're integrating Shadowmap into real estate listing platforms. So if you go and like in the US, Zillow is really big and we try to get through to them. It's really hard, like they're big players and it's hard to get in contact with them. But in Austria, Shadowmap is already integrated in the largest real estate platform, that is Willhaben. So it's really cool and it's very well received. So people are like, wow, okay, that's possible. They didn't even know that something like this would even be possible. And we just make it possible.
My wife and I recently moved to the country and we bought a house in a valley that's oriented north-south, almost perfectly oriented north-south. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning. I've got a mountain here. I've got a mountain there, and I've got a beautiful river that runs right through my backyard, a salmon river. Yeah, it's almost perfect, except I didn't realize until I got there that I lose about an hour every day because of the mountains on either side. So I lose 30 minutes in the morning. I lose 30 minutes of daylight at night. And I'm in Canada, I'm at about the 47th parallel. But in the wintertime, that half an hour means a lot. That hour means a lot, I should say. So yeah, I mean, that would have been, I probably still would have bought the house. I love the house very much. And I love the neighbors and the community. But man, I definitely would have paused for a moment had I realized that I lose a full hour every single day of sunlight. Yeah, it would really impact your choice, your decisions. And do you get into modeling like what happens inside the homes as well? The light coming through the windows and what it looks like inside the house? Can you go that far?
You can, if the models provide the data. So what you can also do in Shadowmap is you can upload your own 3D models.
Yeah.
So architects use the files and they upload them and they place them in the digital twin. And then you can, if you have windows, you can also go inside and look out of the window. That's always like really cool to show this to people because nobody expected, and you just move into the building and look out of the window, and you can also confirm whether the sun rises in your bedroom, for example. Like I would love to have that. I don't have it. I'm living in the first floor in Vienna. Today is one of the last pretty late summer days, but during winter I don't have direct sunlight and it's really painful. So you can simulate it. You can simulate whether you have the sun at which time, going through which window at different seasons of the year. And it gives you perfect clarity. You don't buy I think you say the pig in the bag or something. We say the cat in the bag. Like you know what you're getting into before you
I see. Okay.
throughout the year. You don't have any weird surprises later on. And I know many stories, like I'm doing this for some years now, and the people I'm talking with and what they tell me. Even Dave, our CSO, who's also doing our podcast, mainly, like he bought a house in England, and in the winter he doesn't have direct sunlight and he's not happy about it, and he had no idea. And he's also saying if he had a tool like Shadowmap back in the days, he might not have bought a house because he wasn't aware of that.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. It's like, excuse these examples, but GarageBand made it possible for everybody to record music in their home. And then, things like TikTok made it possible for kids to create dance videos and basically music videos. And you've made it possible for anybody to look at the impact of the sun on their building or on their home or on their community. So it's the word we use in English we'd say that it's democratizing.
Yeah, we also use the word. Some people say it's overused, but I agree. Like we actually democratizing it in the most essential way, and it's such a foundational thing. Like sunlight is really, there would be no life without it. It's like an extremely important source, and there's more and more knowledge and science coming up that just confirms it in so many different aspects. So I think, like Shadowmap, what it is right now, it's also like the current step, but there's so much more we have in our minds we want to bring into the world. Like there's so many aspects to it, and it's just what it's doing now is already beneficial and it's reaching people around the world, but the vision is much bigger. So it's really about healing the relationship between life on Earth and in this amazing energy source.
What makes a home truly extraordinary? Not just how it looks, but how it feels. Solera Reserve transforms daylight into soft, comfortable light. Privacy without blinds. Beauty without compromise. By day, refined and luminous. By night, an unforgettable glow. Solera Reserve. Luxury glass. Designed for living. Learn more at advancedglazings.com/Solera Reserve.
Are you able to hint at anything that's coming, any sort of plans? Or if not, if it's still intellectual property stage, don't share. But if there's anything that you can share or even suggest, I'd love to hear about it.
Yes, one aspect currently is that we will soon launch like a very easy tool to plan solar panels. So at the moment you have like this irradiation map, but you still cannot plan solar panels. And we want to make this also very easy because many people are using this, and we want to provide a great UX. And then I already teased it. We have a lot in our heads about the health aspect, and we are also like conversation not only with Glenn Jeffries, but other people. And it's like extremely motivating to talk with them. It's really cool what they have researched. And I also feel like they are happy to talk with us, and the more like also talking with you now, Joe, it's awesome to feel like there are people who have this awareness and the competence to do something about it. And that's just fun, like it's cool. Like we are doing good stuff, and that's energizing. So the health aspect is going to be a big one. And then we have a very big topic that I can't talk publicly yet, but we will start working on it in Q4. And I also have the big belief that this will have a very positive impact on the world.
I'm going to recommend 2 more people for you to talk to. You need to talk to Martin Moore-Edie, and I can connect you. And you should also talk to Scott Zimmerman, and I can connect you to both of those gentlemen. They're on the artificial lighting side of things, trying to fix all of the shortcomings in artificial lighting, in scenarios where you can't just go outside, where you can't just get sunlight, seniors' homes, things like that, hospitals where mobility is a challenge. So they're trying to, bring some incandescent lighting back into.
So funny, like Dave was posting today on LinkedIn about his son who's going to university now, and he's sending him like an incandescent light bulb so that he at least has some IR spectrum in his cellular system. And like looking at this alone, I had a presentation last week where I was talking about, I mentioned it already, but like what is this whole thing about? I think it's about humans, and it's about a happy, healthy life. And then you have this front which is about decarbonization, and everything needs to be super energy efficient. But if people just suffer because they can't afford energy anymore, they can't afford proper food anymore, and then they live in houses which have super tiny windows because the large windows are not energy efficient, but they get depressed and sick, that's not the right way, in my opinion. And I'm becoming more courageous to voice my opinion because I want to connect with the people who also see it that way, because I don't think that's the future I want to live in. I want to live as I said before, a happy, healthy, productive, creative way. And that needs energy. And there is enough energy. We just need to learn again how to use it properly. There's shitloads of energy if you I apologize.
Oh, no, you can say shit anytime you want. There's no problem at all. And you're absolutely right. I have to ask about mistakes. So while you have people using your tool, they're probably learning and they're probably feeding back to you. You've already even mentioned a couple of people who avoided mistakes. But what kind of mistakes were architects, home buyers, whoever, what kind of mistakes were people making that now that they have this tool, they're not making those mistakes anymore?
I mean, what I'm learning is and I apologize to any architect here, but I'm learning that many architects, they don't care about sunlight at all, which I think is really fascinating because that's such a crucial aspect. And some of them don't think about it at all when they're planning. And this is also interesting because now you could say, I mean, we're still in the beginning stages, but people who use Shadowmap, they can just super quickly within seconds have an understanding of the sunlight situation throughout the year. And then they are enforcing their architects to integrate sunlight into their planning. I think that's really something that should be standard, that architects think a lot about sunlight. I forgot the name, maybe you mentioned him before. There was this Austrian architect, I think 100 years ago, who built houses almost fully passive, 100 years ago. You mean, there's technologically completely different situation. And he was building these houses with lots of overhangs, big glass fronts. So in winter, the light penetrates into the living room. It heats everything up. It makes a bright home. And in summer, the overhangs, they make the house not heat up so much. So it's super smart stuff. I mean, this is how it should be done. I wish, actually, I cannot fully answer that question, maybe to your satisfaction. I really hope that just by democratizing the access of information about sunlight, the whole situation improves and architects are more forced to plan better, and everybody's going to benefit through that as well.
How long has this project been your sort of primary commitment?
So I had the idea, in this winter, it's going to be 14 years that I had the idea.
Yeah.
And then I started working on it around 7 years ago, super small steps. I was still half in the burnout. I just started to make some sketches, did some research, what tools were out there. And to my surprising, that thing wasn't still properly solved, because I had this idea 13 years ago, or almost 14 years ago. And then many years later, I looked at it again and I still didn't see any solution that was to my satisfaction, which was when I decided to start to just build it. It was just me. I just started coding. Yeah, had some hurdles. I also had to learn coding again because I haven't done it for a while. And then step by step, I had some, back then, web technology wasn't so far as well, web-based 3D engines was pretty rough and not so performant. So it wasn't even, I didn't even know if that's possible to build it. I mean, Google Earth was there. So a three-dimensional maps engine seemed doable, but then Google is much bigger and has more resources and more, in-depth knowledge about what they're doing. And it was just me. And also wasn't sure whether you can do shadow mapping, the shadow visualization in real time on the web properly, but everything worked out. Yeah.
Apparently, yeah, that's amazing. And so the reason I asked you about the timeline is, the awareness, it just feels like it's growing so rapidly right now that it's reached a tipping point. Have you had the same experience? Would you say that people know much more about the importance of sunlight now than they did even 7 years ago?
100%. And I think that's so awesome. And what I also feel is that this happened in the last 6 to 12 months, at least on my radar. So up to this point, talking about it, people are like, okay, that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, whatever. And now it feels okay, wow, more and more people get it. The real estate platforms we're integrating with, they're more receptive to it. Urban planners, health people. There's some kind of awakening happening, which I'm really happy about, because it's just more awesome to be in a resonance field with your business partners. Yeah.
Are you getting some traction in North America?
Actually, United States is our biggest revenue source.
Okay.
I think that has a lot to do also with the readiness to pay for solutions, they appreciate value. It's not the biggest traffic source. Our biggest traffic source is actually Brazil, Mexico, Spain, these countries with a lot of sunlight, but they are not so willing to pay. So we're still working on that to figure out. But it also feels like, like those countries who are close to the equator, they benefit a lot from the free version. So our free version allows you to look at the sunlight situation throughout the day. And as soon as you want to change the date, you have to upgrade. And then we have other features like Google 3D tiles and the analytics feature and the ability to customize data, upload models. Like all that stuff is in the premium versions, which cost money. But I think like the equator nations, they can just use the free version and it's good enough because they don't have such seasonal changes. I think that's a big aspect here.
Yeah. Right. So while I'm thinking of it, tell us the URL to make sure people can find it, because there'd be people listening on the podcast. They won't be able to see it. So what is the URL for?
It's Shadowmap, like SHADOWMAP.org. Yeah. And I can really recommend you listeners, if that's okay, to also mention our Sunlight Matters podcast.
Absolutely. That was my next point. But yeah, tell us about Sunlight Matters.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing. I mean, just also talking with you, Joe, I think it's really cool what you're doing. And I think the more people learn about sunlight, the better. And Sunlight Matters is our way to talk with like experts from various areas. We have architects, we have medical people, we have scientists, we have civil engineers, and all of them talk about how sunlight is affecting our lives and give good ideas and inspiration. And my colleague Dave is doing it in a really well way. Sometimes I'm also joining. And we have really interesting, very open conversation. I think that's also really important to have very open conversation and, like just bring ideas out there. And then also like, I think it's also super crucial to change your mind. Like I used to live my life with strong opinions and I was always seeing it as a weakness to change my mind. But now I'm learning it's really awesome to change your mind, to learn new things, look at it from different perspectives, and then optimize your life. And I think that's beautiful. And the more you learn, the better.
I sincerely wish the rest of the world was in the same place as you are in terms of, the need, the importance, the absolutely critical importance of being willing to get new information and change your mind based on new information. So thank you so much for saying that. Usually the people that listen to these kinds of shows are sort of there already, but it needs to be said over and over again. Okay, we're getting close to the end. So there's a couple of things that I always try to do. I always ask this one question. It's my $1 million question. And my guests are from different backgrounds. So I ask them to answer the question from whatever perspective that they'd like. So here we go. What makes a great building?
I think a great building is beautiful and people enjoy looking at it, entering it, being inside of it. Love very bright buildings. I think if it's light flooded, it's gorgeous. It's designed in a way that it's not uncomfortable as well. So you don't want to sweat to death in it. It needs to have good airflow. I love good air. And I think like a disadvantage of very modern buildings and very energy efficient buildings, like there is no airflow. And it can be, and then it depends on the filter systems and everything. But good air inside a building is good. It needs to have a good energy. I think also the place where the building is, what it's surrounded by. I mean, I'm sure that if you've been, I don't know, on the countryside, there's like a 300-year-old wooden building and you just feel awesome in it. You can't really say why. Like you sleep well. It's super, intuitive. Sometimes hard to describe, like I love plants. I love if it's green. I think it's beautiful to have like balconies and plants inside, which also survive, obviously, because they also are very sensitive. The way of how it's heated, like I think that's maybe like a super red flag, but I love how you say kamin, like fireplaces, like having a fireplace that's pure infrared radiation here.
Exactly.
And you subconsciously feel it until like a few months ago, I didn't even know what's going on, but I'm sure it's like all the infrared stuff, which is hitting your cells and making you like relaxed and happy. So that would be my dream home. And I would love to have morning sunrise into my bedroom. I think that would be really awesome. And maybe even like having a look at sunset in the evening. That would be actually perfect.
Right on. You have to come and visit me sometime. All right. So we've got to go shadowmap.org, shadowmap.org, and also the Sunlight Matters podcast. Check it out. Is it available on Spotify and on Apple?
On all the major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everything.
Wonderful. Georg, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. Let's please stay in touch, okay?
Love to. Thank you, Joe. All the best to you as well.
Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Better Buildings for Humans. For more information on the world's best light diffusing and highly insulating glass glazing, please visit advancedglazings.com.